To the cloud. Hey, welcome everyone. This is Aurelio Maraca. I'm the technology program coordinator here at the Danbury Library. And it is June 21st, 2022, summer solstice. And we have a special presentation for you all today. Today's workshop is Hip Hop and Don't Stop with King Khazm, who is a hip hop artist, currently on under contract under a record label. Is that correct? Awesome. Right. And we're going to be going through, the history of hip hop, graffiti art, overcoming adversity. It's going to be a great presentation today. So enough of me talking. Let's get going with King Khazm. Welcome.
When I'm alone in my home, sometimes I get in the zone, contemplate all the angst dissipated through poems. This journey's my own. I buried my bones and turning them stones to expose this path. I follow my road, manifest my situations through my imagination, visual ink plots from pain and preservation. From plight to grace, my space expands time and grind from darkened clouds to rhymes that shine. This difference was a hindrance, but through due diligence, I persevered my fears and hatred. Lifted, now halfway out the matrix, I find in my mind the fitted S beyond design. My temple be the crown, wheelchair be the throne. I project and elevate deep within my dome, astroplaning across everything known. Missing pieces from my history is mystery from eons ago. Before relocation and world war, before feudal law, my ancients united more. Kung Fu era tomb for the leaders in tune with new teachings, Confucius, Tao, and Buddhist philosophical views of spirituality conducive. Through meditations, I can see the future. Unanswered solutions turn conclusive with each strike that I write. Sound becomes louder. The heaven sky fills with meteor showers. Kabuki scenes reveal lifetimes and hours. Something releases from the inner to the outer. My physical is minuscule and now I'm in power. When I'm alone in my home, sometimes I get in the zone, contemplate all the angst dissipated through poems. This journey's my own. I buried my bone and turning them stones to expose this path. I follow my role, follow my role. What's up, y'all? Peace, peace, peace. My name is King Khazm, and you are here joined in conversation with the presentation called Hip Hop and It Don't Stop. As Aurelio said, I am a multidisciplinary artist, MC, producer. I started as a visual artist, and I'm also a community organizer with 206 Zulu and many other organizations. Very blessed to be here. Thank you for having me. So we're here to talk a little bit about hip hop. What is hip hop? Well, I guess if you ask 10 people, you might get 10 different answers. And the really interesting thing is that they can all be accurate. There's a lot of different, incarnations in what hip hop means to different people. Hip hop is an intergenerational and international phenomenon whose legacy is centered in community empowerment, cultural exchange, and resilience. From its humble beginnings to the billion-dollar industry of today, we're going to discuss hip hop's evolution over the last nearly 50 years and examine the vast and varied struggles it has endured while still remaining one of the greatest influences in youth culture today. I wanted to share just a little bit, see if I can get this presentation going, a little bit about myself. My name is King Khazm. That's my artist name. I am born and raised from Seattle, Washington on the West Coast. To give you, I guess skipped around a bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the connotation, generally speaking, that hip hop has. Hip hop, and a lot of times people, when they think about hip hop, they think of it as music, right, or a genre. I like to listen to hip hop, which is true. it is, and it's also often interchangeably used with the term rap. But is there a difference between hip hop and rap? Yes and no. I mean, hip hop and rap are both music, but in the context that myself and a lot of other people that are really passionate about hip hop, we're talking more about the cultural aspect. So rap to us and is more of like the music, right? Or the lyrics, the rhymes, the beats, and hip hop is kind of the umbrella of it, which includes rap, but it also includes other aspects of, like, for instance, breakdancing, graffiti art, turntablism or DJing, and then other elements that are what we call elements of hip hop. So, hip hop to us is a culture and a lifestyle. It's a philosophy. And a lot of, especially in the early days of hip hop, it was guided by these kind of foundational principles of hip hop. We're going to talk a little bit more about kind of the early days and how these principles were applied. But peace, unity, love, having fun, overcoming the negative to the positive. And there's others as well, but peace, unity, love, and having fun. These are very popular attributes and principles that you'll hear often in a lot of songs, call and responses, and is really kind of the founding gel of hip hop. And during a turbulent time where there wasn't that much peace and there wasn't that much unity, and so it was really profound to proclaim that, to say that, hey, peace. When you greet somebody, a lot of times in hip hop we come to each other and we greet each other with peace, because it's a symbolic offering, and we're coming together and intentionally coming in this union with peace. So just to give a little bit about myself, like I said, I'm born and raised in Seattle, Washington, which is in the northwest area of the United States, West Coast. I was in a car accident as a child, and probably about 5 years old or so. And for me, that was really kind of a pivotal moment that that kind of changed my life in a lot of ways. It was a lot of relearning of things, and for me, it was a lot of I mean, obviously a lot of hardship and things. And for me, like, I really attribute music and art, specifically art from the early days, was the thing that I gravitated towards. I had to relearn how to kind of use my hands in a way where I could hold a pencil and hold markers and pens. And once I was able to, I just really gravitated towards that, and I became just submerged into the world of art. And all kinds of art, comic book art, illustration. I was really big into lettering and graffiti art. And it was just kind of like my expression. It was my way to process things and to express myself in a positive way. It was also like my portal to learning about hip hop, and being able to channel my aggression, my frustrations and sadness and everything going on in a positive way. And that I didn't necessarily wanted to communicate that verbally or, talk to people. I kind of just like to go into my own world and escape and use my imagination. Kind of like the song earlier, just being in the home alone, and just visualizing what's possible in life, and creating my own realities. And a lot of times that really helped me kind of get through a lot of hard times. And over the years, I got pretty good at it. I was very, very blessed to be able to start doing things professionally. Pretty much in high school, I started some of my first my first work, getting a lot of commissions. People were always asking me to do their names. So I mean, even that traces back to middle school. I had these little side hustles as a kid, you know, and so, yeah, I started to learn about this world of, not just illustration, but graphic design and, lettering in different senses. And I eventually got into applying my art in other ways, that, clothing, advertisements. We started doing a lot of handbills for, events and posters. Here's a few examples of some of the work that I've done. In high school, a group of peers and I, from Franklin High School, we started a graffiti crew called Mad Crew, it was an acronym for Madness After Dark, MAD. And we were a graffiti crew that evolved very quickly into a hip hop crew, and then eventually into a multimedia company. We started hosting events during a time, and I'm sure there's a lot of cities as I began to study that had kind of parallel kind of situations, but there was a lot of restrictions, especially in that time, as you look into the late 1990s, or mid to late 1990s. We had a thing called the Teen Dance Ordinance, and it really kind of in a lot of ways trivialized and demonized music, or really a gathering of young people. And yeah, we definitely had negative elements. There was a really huge gang culture, but a lot of us were just so hungry for something positive, and we weren't really able to do that. We weren't really able to have access to amazing spaces like Danbury Library and so on and so forth. We did have one place called Jefferson Community Center eventually, that would open up their doors and let us come in and practice breakdancing. But we started hosting our events, and they were very popular. People would be like, when's the next show? When's the next show? And so we just started doing them. A lot of initially unconventional spaces. Early on it was a house parties, lofts. On the bottom left, you can see one of the loft parties. And then as we would, start to do stuff in, like, warehouses and places that were kind of little gray area. And then slowly there was groups such as the Ballard, or the excuse me the Teen Firehouse, and other places that evolved into the Vera Project, and people that were actively working kind of behind the scenes with the city, addressing kind of the municipal codes and creating more spaces. And so we were finally able to, start hosting larger events at places like Seattle Center, and yeah, quite popular. We, really kind of were part of the revitalization of a lot of these events in different senses. We started, and this is something I think would be really valuable for Danbury, especially with the media department. As a very young age, started learning about the importance and the value of being able to represent yourself, and a lot of times, other people want to, they tell our stories for us, and a lot of that kind of gets convoluted, and it becomes a different interpretation of our stories. And so we learned early on, kind of by accident, just from having little cameras and going around and documenting different events, breakdance competitions, live art, street ciphers, which is, basically freestyles coming together in prompts just on the street, and a lot of different events. And so we kind of compiled all these videos and created these kind of documentary videos. And so these ones in particular were highly popular. We were able to establish some distribution. Keep in mind, this is much before YouTube and all the kind of the world of online, really anything online. And, we were able to have them distributed into stores. The one on the left in particular, Enter the Madness, was a feature-length documentary that we were able to get distributed into skate shops all around the United States. And it was a really big deal, not just for us as Mad Crew, but as a scene in the North Pacific Northwest, including, not just Seattle and Washington, but, Oregon, and also even, Vancouver and parts of Canada, on a national scale, and this is a really big time, and really kind of was our big introduction. This is around 1999 or so. And kind of hinging on that kind of segued into media production and actually television. There was a station, it was called Seattle Community Access Network, SCAN TV, and it was essentially public access, where by law they were required to offer free and public services for the community to create content and broadcast it. And so we created a show called Hip Hop 101, which was highly popular. It was a live broadcast that ran weekly. We had a live audience. We'd have each week we'd have a guest DJ, we'd have hosts, performers, we'd have dance choreography and people coming in, and then we'd go out into the field also. And we're all just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, learning as we go. And we'd have a lot of our friends would go on field and go to the different events, or if there's any news or kind of local events or things that were happening in the community, we would go out and we would document it and conduct interviews and edit it and take it back. And yeah, it was a really, really special thing. This is pre-YouTube. The show that I was a co-founder and produced from about 1999 to 2009. And then shortly after that was pretty much the station ended up closing around that time. Yeah, through my journeys, as I mentioned, I started as a visual artist, and I got into poetry through middle school and high school. I've always been fascinated by these ideas and kind of twisting words and kind of manipulating like double entendres and different meanings, and that's what really spoke to me, is like lyricism in hip hop, and the beats. There was something very unique about the beats and just the hard bass and the drums that were very different. I grew up from a very diverse musical background, and my parents, they play all kinds of stuff from funk and soul and rock and roll and everything in between. And I loved it all, but something about hip hop really spoke to me. And yeah, I just started really getting into emceeing or rapping after high school, and I've been very blessed and fortunate to have been able to travel the world over the years. I've been in many cities all around the United States, and I've been Central America, South America, Europe, Asia. I've really been very fortunate to be able to travel, not just with my music, but also I have this passion for, I guess, like right now, just sharing my, what I've learned and stories, and helping others, and like, bringing out their creative potential, and something that I was doing since I was learning. It wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be a teacher or anything. I just really love being able to share and learning from others. It's really important that it's reciprocal in that regard. And yeah, I love that exchange. And so through my travels, I've been able to also do a lot of things like, obviously lecturing and talking, but a lot of workshops, educational workshops, and interactive activities, ranging from, beat production to engineering, to creative writing workshops, and all different types of stuff. But I really make a point, you know, not just the concerts and stuff, which is really amazing. I mean, I love it, but this is something that's equally as important to me, is connecting with the community, actually the people that are actually immersed in that scene, and learning about the communities, learning about the scene and the culture, especially in these international communities. Just a little bit about I guess the evolution from the creative aspects. I got it really into like through education and like the more that I would study hip hop, the more that I would learn about different points of views and different struggles, and kind of that we were all kind of going through the same or similar things, maybe different cultures, maybe different religions or languages, but we were all in generally kind of moving towards the same direction or aspirations in life. And it kind of slowly opened up a portal of activism. You know, I really didn't, it wasn't really an intentional kind of decision, but I'm very passionate about creating opportunities for my peers, my friends, my community. And you know, if it's something that I have access to, then it's something that we all have access to. And so especially as a young person who has overcome, you know, a lot of hardships and kind of surviving a lot of the gang wars and all the kinds of crazy stuff, and seeing that a lot of times all we need is just an opportunity or a space to be heard, you know. And so I started getting involved with advocacy, you know, youth advocacy and arts, and disability rights, you know, advocating for more access and equity, really in all senses. And so this picture is our beloved headquarters. I run a nonprofit organization called 206 Zulu, and it's a hip hop centered organization. We do a lot of you know, events, programs. We have recording facilities, video production spaces. You can come and learn about how to manage the cameras and how to create scripts and things of that nature. Located in Seattle, Washington. If you are ever in Seattle, definitely feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to have you. If you follow our Instagram, there's always events there going on throughout the year, throughout the week. As I mentioned, you know, definitely, I think one of the most challenging things in life, especially as a disabled artist, being in a wheelchair, is traveling. But it's also by far the most gratifying thing that I do in life. I love being able to experience other cultures, other ways of life, and hip hop has been such a unifying thing. You know, it truly transcends, you know, a lot of these so-called barriers that we kind of create for ourselves, and have been able to really kind of like connect with a lot of people that don't even speak the same language, you know, or have different faiths, or, you know, different things, and people that, you know, I consider family, you know, comrades and brothers and sisters, and in the hip hop family that I've been able to connect with all around the world. And it's such a beautiful thing, you know. I would have never imagined doing this as a young person, you know, who it's hard to even fathom, you know, anything outside of your immediate neighborhood in a lot of regards. So that's just a little bit of background on myself. I really feel free to, if there's any, like, you know, questions or anything, feel free to interject. Definitely want to keep it open, and I'll have questions at the end if anybody has anything. Otherwise, yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about the birth of hip hop, or the evolution, which is really interesting. You know, I've growing up, I didn't have access to a lot of the, any internet and stuff like that. And so hip hop, I felt like from a very early age was something that conscientiously improved my life. Like I can actually say that it literally, figuratively and literally has saved my life in many, many circumstances. And for that, I'm like incredibly indebted. And that's really a really important part of why I feel like giving back is so important, and like, you know, passing the baton, so to speak. And so when I was wanting to learn more about hip hop, this thing that was just so special, that was such an important part of my life, I really had to go out there and I had to travel. I started going to other cities, LA, New York and Florida, and going to all these different places and learning firsthand. I've been able to, very fortunate to connect with a lot of original pioneers of hip hop, people that were there from the very beginning, before it even had a name of hip hop, and being able to kind of piece together all these stories. And oral stories are a huge part of our traditions in hip hop culture. And so I'm just going to give you kind of a brief snapshot of hip hop. And even before that, a little bit before it was really hip hop. So in areas of the New York in particular, the Bronx is where we're going to focus. There was a lot of, I guess you could say, systemic neglect, which would become known as benign neglect. It was essentially a strategic attempt between, politicians, landlords, a lot of kind of powers to be, to kind of neglect it and kind of deplete the resources. This is kind of a perfect storm between, kind of the economic struggles that was happening during that time. We're talking about the pretty much throughout the entire 70s, from the early to mid 70s in particular. Just to kind of give you a context of what the Bronx was like around that time, there was a lot of people that were displaced. There was a massive super freeway that was highly responsible for kind of the displacement of people. Over 60,000 Bronx residents were simply told they had, a few months to move out. Excuse me. With very little compensation. And so a lot of the European immigrants, Irish, Jewish, Italians, were, essentially it was an exodus, but there was a lot of, Black and brown folks that wasn't able to move out. And so a lot of landlords began buying up apartment buildings and charging, increased unreasonable rent rates, kind of a chain reaction when rent got, power got cut off and these buildings are empty. They would hire, it was basically a scam to collect insurance funds by burning down these buildings. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance collections. And so, that was really kind of a very significant thing of you have the Bronx, which is essentially an entire city or a sub-city of New York that was burnt down. I mean, you had a lot of buildings, I think more than 30,000 fires that were set in the South Bronx, which destroyed 43,000 housing units, essentially turning entire blocks into ghost towns. And so, and of course, a lot of resources and community centers and things like that weren't really prevalent because there was not that much opportunity, not that much work and things like that. And this is, here's just a really powerful picture. the development and the rise of gang culture. You know, as I mentioned, a lot of social services were cut. Uh, you know, a lot of times not really the best access to police, or you know, maybe not not in the regard of protecting and serving in the way that folks really needed. And so, you know, a lot of young people kind of ended up kind of forming their own groups, their own support systems and peers that would protect and look out for each other. And you have the rise of gang culture, which, you know, of course, has a lot of negative elements, you know, with violence and things of that nature. But a lot of these groups were really also, this is between the early and mid 70s, were kind of on the heels of the civil rights movement. And so, you know, we're highly inspired and influenced by groups like, you know, the Brown Berets and, you know, the Black Panther parties. And so there was these kind of ideas of, you know, maybe there's things that are kind of perpetuating the cycle of life, that like why we are you know, basically killing each other and perpetuating violence. And so a lot of these groups, like I said, were inspired by these kind of social and civic groups that kind of were inspired by these ideas of revolution. And you know, long story short, there was really a few, but this is one moment that was kind of the shift in the environment, where the gangs were, and this was a very dangerous thing because of a very volatile situation, and it was really on the culminating to what could be an all-out war between hundreds of gangs representing thousands of members, you know, and it was, like I said, a very volatile state. There was some individuals that kind of led this movement to, hey, let's get together and talk about what's going on and see if we can kind of come to some sort of resolution. At least, you know, if we're not necessarily, you know, cool with each other, at least we can respect our respective areas and not die. You know, there was a lot of violence. So I'm gonna play this little clip that yeah, is one of the early initial conversations that led to a gang truce.
So the process of turning the killing of Cornell Benjamin into something positive for the community was made to depend upon a truce meeting engineered by the Ghetto Brothers and to be attended by gang presidents and vice presidents from all over the area.
I'm telling you, man, because Black Benji died for peace, man. And like, wow, this is what we seeking, man. That's what this meeting is for, man. For peace among each other. You understand?
Well, that was the beef with them. Well, how did we get in there?
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you how you got in it. Because, like, let me tell you, who was at the motherfucking fight, man, when Black Benji got struck down, when he was hollering like, wow, why should we all fight, man? We all Black and Puerto Ricans, huh? When they fucking hit him in the head with a pipe, man, and while he was laying on the floor, they said like, wow, Black Benji, all he came out of his mouth was say like, wow, man, why should we fight, man? You understand? And they struck him down dead. And you think that's righteous, man?
They
Like,
said,
wow.
you looking for us.
Let me tell you something. If we were looking for you, man, I guarantee you, we would have came to your turf, brother. We would have came to your turf. You understand? We wasn't looking for nobody. You know why? Because Louis asked us to be cool, and the police asked us to be cool, and the Zulu brothers asked us to be cool. Because let me tell you, Brother Benji here is our brother, man. He's my brother, Jack.
We did it. He's the truth.
And I tell you, Jack,
Such a powerful moment. Yeah, as I mentioned, you know, there was a few of these really pivotal conversations that came together, and the ultimate you know, there was a very influential person by the name of Black Benji who was kind of their, what they call a peacekeeper, and he went to intervene a conflict, and he was basically, he died as a result of that. And so there was a lot of controversy, being that he was a peacekeeper who died. And his gang, you know, there was a lot of kind of rumblings about what to do, but they ultimately wanted to honor his death in a movement towards peace. And so instead of retaliating, they decided to, you know, have these conversations, and yeah, they ended up having a truce, you know, and that was really the beginning of what would become hip hop. And a lot of these different people were able to, for the first time, like go into different sections in the neighborhood, even different boroughs that they weren't able to before. And you know, because it wasn't quite as, I mean, of course it wasn't you know, fully safe, or not, you know, you still had the, you know, elements of life, but in terms of kind of the day-to-day, you know, it was a shift. It was a huge shift, you know, and being able to go out and like, it was almost like a breath of fresh air, you know, and a lot of people can like go to these parties and not, you know, have to worry. And it was just people having fun. And so really the hip hop was birthed from the parties and people coming together, and peace, you know, when we talked earlier about the attributes, peace, unity, love, and having fun. And these are kind of the tenets of hip hop. So a lot of these former gang members would have these basically come together and unify, and it became the first hip hop organization called the Zulu Nation. And a lot of these members of Zulu were some of the first DJs, some of the first people to host these massive block parties. When we talk about hip hop, often we're talking about the four main elements of hip hop. Talked a little bit earlier. The DJ is often regarded as kind of the backbone of hip hop, because that's where the parties were. You know, the DJ would provide the soundtrack to that. And what made a hip hop DJ unique, because there was, you know, obviously DJs, radio DJs and disco DJs, and you know, I mean, the record is not something that was created in the 1970s, but in regards to how the music was manipulated, that was new. You know, being able to just seamlessly cross between all these different genres. And mind you, this is before hip hop music, so there, you know, before there was hip hop beats and raps and things, it was just this unique style of mixing, and in particular looping, taking two turntables with two of the same records and being able to extend portions of and a lot, especially a lot of you know, we call them the breaks, because there's a part, especially in a lot of like funk, like if you ever hear James Brown or Sly Stone, things like that, you know, when all the singing drops out and all the, you know, the instruments, and a lot of times it's just very stripped down. It's just the drums and maybe like a bass line. And the DJs will notice that that's where people were really getting engaged. They were like getting hype. And so they would extend what could be, you know, 15-second thing and basically run it back to the beginning of that, play it on the other turntable, and be able to extend something that's 15 seconds to as long as they wanted to. And that was kind of the birth of the breaks. The breaks were they evolved and they became more technical and faster, and you know, eventually started incorporating scratching. Definitely want to give due to Grand Wizard Theodore, who is often regarded as the man that invented the scratch. Definitely want to give respects to DJ Kool Herc, who's regarded as kind of the founder of hip hop and DJing, hip hop DJing. And so from the breaks, you have the MCs, or the M as in masters of ceremonies or microphone controllers. The MCs in the original days were more of to accentuate the DJ, because like we said, it was all about the DJ and having these huge parties. So it's being able to kind of guide the energy and you know, giving shout outs to people in the audience and different groups, and doing call and responses, getting people to, go back and forth with chants and things like that, and evolve into rapping, rhyming, incorporating, music with raps, and that became its own kind of element. MCing is often looked at as kind of when you talk, like we said earlier, when you talk about rap or hip hop, you think of it as kind of this is the element that you often think of. But like you said, there's a lot more to it. From the breaks of the records, as I mentioned, people would get really hype, just engaged on those parts of the songs. And when they started extending those breaks and even getting more technical and like how they would loop those drums and things like that, that's where people really started evolving their dance. There was, a lot of different dance forms, call it rocking. And from the breaks, you start having these what they call B-boys and B-girls, break boys, or break dancing is a term that has been evolved by the media in particular. But the people that actually did it at that time called themselves B-boys. And it was taking their rocking, their different dance forms, and taking it to the ground with footwork and freezes and a lot of aerodynamic moves, like back spins and helicopters, head spins, all these different things that were really just unheard of at that time. It was like, yo, that's bugged out, that's wild, and as soon as you see it, you just run to the circle, it's just like, yo, that's crazy. Like, these guys are doing some, they're defying gravity. And so those are the B-boys and B-girls, and that evolved in its own really world. I mean, nowadays you have international competitions, and it's even albeit a controversial subject, it is becoming incorporated into sports. And the 2024 Olympics, I think it's 2024, will be held in Paris, and that will be the debut of breaking in the Olympics. And so there's a whole world behind that, and like, what, dance is not a sport, and it's all about the music and the vibe, and how can you accurately score, anyways, it's a very interesting conversation. But it is evolving, and it has a lot of currently, and even in the last couple decades, national and international competitions of some of the world's best, B-boys that are like competing for, thousands and thousands of dollars, and just being able to travel the world, and then subsequently being able to, create careers and doing commercials and doing choreography for Justin Timberlake and people like that. Actually, Boogaloo Shrimp, who was one of the head actors in the movie called Breakin'. You might want to write that down. There's actually two parts, Breakin', and then Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. Those are some very early hip hop movies that came out, I believe in around 84 or so, that really kind of were responsible for catapulting hip hop into a national and international audience, and was just like almost overnight, just like everybody was breaking, you'd see people anywhere in small towns, and like, just, it was just crazy. But anyways, Boogaloo Shrimp, who's
I could
playing-
interject, sorry to
Yeah.
ruin your flow, but also may want to add to that list Beat Street and Wild Style. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I remember Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. Everybody was outside on some cardboard trying to do some moves.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely write that down. Wild Style, Beat Street. There's one that I love called Style Wars.
Yes,
And Breaking. I
Style
mean,
Wars is awesome.
those are really kind of like the very early movies, hip hop movies that just catapulted hip hop into a world stage. And so yeah, the point was that Boogaloo Shrimp, his career would evolve, and he would do like help do choreography for Michael Jackson, and like teaching Michael Jackson how to moonwalk, and all kinds of really great. He did the robot Urkel and Family Matters, and just all kinds of stuff. Each of these, the point is that each of these elements have all evolved into their own really worlds and often careers. Now feel free to interject at any time. The fourth element, which is graffiti art, essentially predates hip hop. I mean, arguably you could say graffiti art, started from the inception of civilization, the Paleolithic era, hundreds of thousands of years ago, when, people had a desire to express themselves visually, even when there wasn't, like paints or anything like anything, just kind of conceiving these ideas of like, how can we crush berries, or how can we create pigments and like paint stories, on like rocks or caves or different areas, and be able to tell our stories. And the reason I correlate that with graffiti is because, just as the other elements, like a lot of these are from communities that don't necessarily have resources. They don't, with graffiti art, like a lot of young artists couldn't necessarily go to, art college, or really had like resources to expensive paints or different things like that. And so like, like what can we take? What do we have access to? And like, oh, markers, spray paint, like how can we, like, spray paint's not a traditionally like considered like a medium of like art, it's more of a craft thing. And to be able to manipulate it, in a way where you can create anything. I mean, you can create portraits, you can do cartoon type things, you can do letters, you can do, it's really just another type of medium that can be applied to anything. And so having that kind of creative ingenuity of like, I just want to create, and like, it became more of a, I guess you could say like a competition to like who can do it bigger and more colorful and like, more places. How can we get it seen? And so like a lot of the early graffiti was passed on through trains, because trains can go from borough to borough and things like that. And that also evolved too, and people is, albeit as controversial as the element is, there was a lot of people that were really really like passionate about, the art, like the viable, just the culture of graffiti, and there was some of the early art galleries, and began to evolve into commercials and banners and advertisements and clothing, and all these different things. I mean, just look around today, and with from a lens of graffiti art, and like look at the influence that graffiti art and hip hop has had, and even a lot of things that you don't even necessarily think of as hip hop has in a lot of places kind of had some subsequent kind of influence. And kind of the beauty of hip hop is that it's really like a cornucopia, so there's a lot of things that influence hip hop and vice versa. And especially as we start getting into the expansion of hip hop internationally, and all these different cultures that kind of bring their own artistic aspects to it. Kind of before we start wrapping up, I do want to mention, we often talk about the four main elements of hip hop. And with Zulu, we in hip hop, a lot of people that we are passionate about hip hop culture, we acknowledge the fifth element as knowledge, or kind of the education piece that ties it all together, having an awareness of self, having a just education, and I, to be honest, I really barely graduated high school. And I got through it. And I love learning, but it just the way that the methodology and the way that it was presented, I don't know. I feel like I learned a lot more through music and hip hop. And like I said earlier, I began to kind of see a lot of similarities and parallels between the way I was living and, essentially the birth of hip hop and other, as I began to explore different places, like their ways of life and different countries and things. And so really, like, to me, one of the most important elements of hip hop is knowledge, or the kind of the binding aspect of bringing it all together. And so, of course, I think we're gonna kind of put a little bow on it here, but as hip hop, began to expand from the Bronx to Manhattan, because they definitely had a lot benign neglect and all the kind of the subsequent kind of realities of life in the Bronx, not really where you would want to send your children to. There was a lot of these elements that were being brought over from the Bronx to Manhattan in the city, and so like the clubs and where you would see like these hip hop DJs and breaking and some of the earliest graffiti art galleries and things like that. And like with the films that we mentioned earlier, right at the time from the early to the mid 80s, it really just blew up very, very quickly. And so you have some of the first world tours, Zulu Nation, and a lot of the groups affiliated with Zulu would go on some of the earliest tours and spread not just the kind of the ideas and the principles of hip hop and the elements, but also Zulu Nation chapters and organizations. And that is where my journey began, or not began, but kind of the I guess the crossroads in which my journey and kind of larger hip hop movements coincided when I started traveling and I started meeting a lot of Zulus and other folks that would kind of tie back to this intricate family tree, this web of hip hop, and really at the heart of it was Zulu. And so, it was also very much parallels of what myself and my peers were going through. And so we created a chapter in Seattle called 206 Zulu. And yeah, it's been really great. We've formed it into a nonprofit organization. And I showed you Washington Hall. That's where our base of operations is, hosting all different types of programs, concerts, events, recording facilities, and video production studios, and all different types of stuff, and through a lens of hip hop. So, I implore you to learn, whatever it is that compels you in life. I mean, even if, whatever it is, just follow it, follow what makes you happy, what really, because you don't have to work, you're working, but it's something that you enjoy doing. I know that I'm a very rare exception, because, I've actually only, hip hop is all I've ever done. And I've never worked kind of a traditional 9-to-5 or, things like that. And so I'm very grateful, but I do think it's possible. If I can do it, anybody can. So whatever it is that you have passion around, follow it, and see where it can lead you. There's a lot of there's a lot of twists and turns, and it's definitely not a easy road. But it's a road that I love, and I'm very grateful. And yeah, for me, hip hop being able to fuse together all these different things that I love, between, you know, art, music production, rhyming, connecting with people. And it's just a lot of different aspects, you know, that really what's happening was I was becoming more of an entrepreneur, not even knowing what the word meant, you know, and just creating organizations and businesses and groups. And you know, it's been a long journey. It's, you know, 25 plus years in the works, and it's been very fruitful. And being able to, like I said, being able to travel and connect with other people that are just as passionate, if not more, about hip hop, and seeing how, especially in other places, other countries, where hip hop is literally the only thing that's like that they have to hold on to. It becomes much more personal. And so seeing that, the ability that hip hop has to transform lives, you know, it definitely transformed my life. And you know, for people, that can be different things. It can be, you know, technology, it can be you know, film and media, and it can be education or teaching, you know, just whatever it is, you know, just really tap into that. And I think, you know, in the end, life is short, you know, and so it's really important that we are guided by our visions, you know. And it's okay too if you don't know what that is right away. You know, a lot of times things just have a way of working themselves out, and you're like, oh, this is this is dope, like, yo, like, you know, and then things turn, energy mobilizes into something that you wouldn't have been able to even imagine. So yeah, thank you again for having me. Really, if there's any questions or anything, or
Oh,
follow up.
yeah, we, you know, we have Parker on. So if you can, Parker, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself. Don't turn your camera on, because you're still under the age group for consent for a young person. But if you have any questions, if you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself, or if you feel more comfortable, you can certainly type it in the chat. You know, I can relay the question to King Khazm. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing so much of your passion and your experience and your knowledge and your creative, you know, power, you know, and sharing with us here in Danbury, Connecticut. I'm sure that will, your story and your example will inspire a lot of young people to follow that creative path and follow that path to a vision that's uniquely theirs. And that's something that we encourage here at the Danbury Library, and also with our Studio 170 video and audio facility that we have here, that you can just, you know, come in and record your own tracks, your own voice, your own music, and also film it in our video facility for free, you know, with a Connecticut library card. You know, anyone in the state of Connecticut can come in and use our facility for free, as long as you're above the age of 18. But if you're under the age of 18, please come in with an adult or a guardian that can check it out for you, the studio, and you can spend a long time there exploring your creativity. And also we do have, I noticed that you did a lot of stuff with visual work, and, you know, with design and like sneakers and, you know, clothing and everything. We do have that facility now. It just opened up. We have a maker space called Maker Lab. We have 3D printers. We have sewing, embroidery machine. We have other things that you can explore your creativity. If there are, you know, a visual, you know, if you're a visual artist or just a 3D artist, if you want to, you know, make prototypes or fabricate things, or, you know, just be creative. This is space that you can come in. If you know, I know a lot of kids that don't have a quiet space at home, or you know, an environment there that's, you know, that stimulates creativity. I know, you know, sometimes it's just home is not the place, and you escape, you know, outside. And sometimes a lot of folks come to the library and they get themselves lost in books, or, you know, meet up with friends and have a connection. And, you know, we are here to, you know, establish that connection for a lot of kids who may not have the opportunity at home or otherwise at school.
That is just such an amazing resource. You know, I would I would have saved me so much. Yeah, that would have just I dreamed of something like that when I was young. Just to be
Same
able to,
here, just to be like, yeah, just whatever, you know, music, drawing, painting, you know, making things, you know, doing music, you know, that's, you know, it's a lifeline, you know, to who you want to be, you know, or finding out who you want to be.
Mhm. Absolutely take advantage of it, you guys. It's definitely, you know, just try it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Great.
So if we don't have any questions, Parker, you know, it's fine. You know, you don't have to have questions. You answered a lot of questions. I'll tell you that your presentation was fantastic. And I'm sure, you know, once we put this up on YouTube for archival purposes, this will be something that, you know, people will be coming and checking out for, you know, years to come. And on behalf of the Danbury Library and the Friends of the Danbury Library, I thank you, King Khazm, for sharing some of your time with us today. And if there's any last words you want to bestow upon us, go ahead.
No, just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for all the amazing work in the community. Yeah, feel free to stay in touch at King Khazm on Instagram and Facebook, or if you want to learn, if you're traveling to Seattle, you know, like you say, we have Washington Hall and 206 Zulu, lots of amazing programs regardless of age. There's events, festivals, programs, all types of stuff. You can go to Facebook or Instagram at 206 Zulu, ZULU, and yeah, just keep in contact. Appreciate the opportunity.
Anytime. And, you know, say once again, thank you and peace unto you, sir. And to everyone who's out there, may you follow create a creative and positive path in your life.